on live stream, buddy.
You're on.
You're in the movies. Right there now.
Yeah, I see that, thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our first Planning and Heritage Committee meeting for 2026. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Do we have any declaration of conflicts this evening? Seeing none, can I have an approval of our agenda?
Can I just, under introduction of new business, can I just put some?
Yes,
Or do you want me to
absolutely.
wait until?
No, you can let them rip now and we'll just add them to the list.
I've been compiling this list for a little while.
Okay.
The first issue is just an update on the overhaul review of our zone development bylaw. What are our timelines? Just,
Okay,
might not get it today, but I'm just putting that out there.
yep,
When I was when you and I were up to Stratford, I did meet up with our former bylaw enforcement officer,
Elizabeth.
and she misses being here in Charlottetown, but she's a supervisor, or manager of
Okay,
bylaw enforcement up there.
so we'll ask for an update on that.
Because that was our
Yeah.
second one that was dealing specifically with Airbnbs.
Yep, exactly.
short-term
STRs.
rentals.
Yep,
And I've spoken, Madam Chair, I've spoken to you, and I've spoken to some of the, one member of the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. They have not met, and I asked the chair, and she said, well, we don't have a resource person to, oversee the operation of that advisory committee.
okay,
And we only have Melissa, and Melissa is, overworked right now, so just wondering what's the update on that position?
okay, we'll add that.
Second input officer. And with some postings on social media regarding 1 West Street, we keep talking about the heritage preservation bylaw.
Yep.
I'm just trying to get an update on that.
No problem.
And last but not least is that as today I had a meeting with a short-term rental owner, and she said that one of the requirements for her short-term rental is that she has to provide a blueprint every year of her structure. That might be for fire, health and safety. I just trying to get information on that.
Okay,
And
perfect.
one thing she discovered, and I think other short-term rental operators are discovering, is that just recently the provincial property tax department, if you are a short-term rental, you're no longer an owner-operator or owner-operator of your home. You're now a principal owner, so that affects your tax bill, and I'm just trying to find out if, we should get that information out to anyone that wants to get into the short-term rental business.
Yeah, I believe people's taxes go up.
Yeah, so your market value goes to the same level as your taxable level, and that can add a significant amount to your tax. And that's just, I can just put them there.
No problem. So when we get to that, when we get to number 7 after our presentation, then we can have staff outline to us what they can share with us today and what they can take back and bring back. And once we get there, we'll definitely have a more fulsome discussion on where we're at with
And
this.
this is the last one, Madam
Yep.
Chair, I'm sorry. It's the Black Sand Bridge project, that's the piece of property that lies on Euston Street meets Brighton Road.
Yep,
There was a Sam Martin, was one of our first persons of color to develop that area in the Brighton area, and there is quite a history to it. So I did bring it up, I know I did, Madam Chair. I
many
just wanted
times,
to
yeah.
get an update.
Okay, great. So those are added to our agenda for the end of the meeting. So we can now move on to adoption of the minutes from our October 9th meeting. Someone
Yeah,
wanna move
move.
that? Moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded by His Worship. Any business arising from those minutes? Okay, we can now move right on to reports and discussions, and this evening we are having a presentation by Fusion Charlottetown around the zoning and development bylaw and some of their recommendations. So I can turn that right over to you,
Thank you so much, Counselor. So
Matt, by the way, I should have said Matt Pelche, yeah, instead of just you.
it's in my notes to
Welcome.
introduce myself too, don't worry,
Welcome.
don't worry.
Yeah, welcome, by the way.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, good evening, folks. So my name is Matt Peltier. I'm the Vice President of Fusion Charlottetown. I'd like to thank the city's planning staff and for fitting us in today, but also for the hard work that the department has done on the official plan and zoning and development bylaw consultations over the past few years. For those who don't know, Fusion Charlottetown is a volunteer-run organization that supports youth and young adults in the capital region. We do this primarily through sustainability programming, community events, and policy advocacy. Fusion sees housing as a major determinant for the ability of young people to move here, to stay here, and if they so choose, start a family of their own. For this reason, Fusion has been a big supporter of the efforts by council, by the planning board, by planning staff, to reform local land use rules to facilitate more housing options. We voiced our support for the draft official plan at the last council meeting, and we supported conditional ministerial approval of the plan last summer. And more recently, we've called for the ambition to be upheld in the design of this zoning and development bylaw stage per our letter to the planning board in October. If I could go to the next slide, please. With Charlottetown's population expected to grow by anywhere between 3,000 to 6,000 people by the end of the decade, it's important that housing supply keeps up with demand. With housing construction currently happening at a good pace based on the past few quarters of CMHC data, and while this has been happening, this is largely an outlier based on historic trends, based on what we saw between 2020 and 2024. We're seeing good momentum on the housing start side, especially in the capital region. And it's important that we have a planning system and land use policies that can help keep that momentum going in the long run. If we go to the next slide, please. This is crucial because based on current trends, the city's population is going to age significantly over the next 25 years, with young people making up a decreasing share of the population. If this trend isn't corrected, Charlottetown will lose its standing as the island's economic and employment engine. The demographic decline will see Charlottetown and PEI more broadly return to a sustained period of outmigration to other provinces as younger residents and new families move off island in search of better opportunities. And the young people who do choose to stay will face an ever-growing share of the tax burden to support social services for that aging population. If we go to the next slide, please. Fortunately, if the city adopts a zoning code that better accommodates housing, we can create a Charlottetown that is younger, more prosperous, and environmentally and fiscally sustainable. We've outlined some recommendations, which you can find in your package and in the letter from October, and if you'd like a hard copy of that, I've got that on hand too, and I can pass that around in a second. But the slides should cover kind of the gist of what we're getting at here today. Next slide, please. In our view, this means keeping the original ambition of the official plan by allowing 4 plexes as of right within all residential zones for all dwelling units, for all residential zones, pardon me, and then creating a cascading mechanism for medium and higher density residential areas. Additionally, the city should look to allow 4-story apartments as of right in higher density residential zones, downtown and waterfront zones, and within 800 meters of post-secondary and health institutions, all post-secondary and health institutions. This is crucial if we want folks, younger folks to be able to live closer to where they work or where they study. And then from there, the zoning and development bylaw should adhere to that initial official plan commitment by allowing 10-story apartments at growth nodes and 6-story apartments along growth corridors. If we go to the next slide, please. We also believe it's important to point out that even from the city's own surveying, most residents find 4 plexes to be acceptable. And even when you look at 6 plexes, which is just the second column to the right on screen there, there's an even split between acceptable and non-acceptable among the respondents. So there's a lot of buy-in from Charlottetown residents for sensible multifamily options like these. Go to the next slide, please. And while land use reform is essential to improving the affordability and availability of housing, the market alone won't address the housing needs of all of the lower income households in Charlottetown. We believe that there needs to be specific measures to get affordable housing projects online, such as by prioritizing review decisions for projects with affordable and family-sized units, exempting affordable housing projects from existing permitting fees, and working with the province to bring in new rental replacement requirements so that we can protect the existing stock of affordable rental units. These measures would allow projects like the one I have on screen here, which is the PEI Housing Corporation funded project on Richmond Street, to get built more easily, to face fewer IRAC appeals and red tape obstacles, and to give lower income families the housing that they really desperately need. If we go to the next slide, please. Fusion also recognizes that much of what drives people to move to and live in Charlottetown, especially in the downtown area, has to do with the aesthetic of the 500 lot area. It's possible to find a balance between getting the housing we really need built downtown with some of the provisions for heritage aesthetics. The new official plan that was adopted by council speaks to the implementation of a form-based code, which Fusion fully supports. We think that there's an opportunity to prioritize the built form rather than simply just the intended use of a project in permitting decisions, so that we can allow fourplexes and four-story apartments in areas where they very much make sense to be built. And on the condition that some of the frontage matches the neighboring structures and streetscapes. One way you can actually do that is by automatically accepting some of the designs that were prepared for Atlantic Canada in the CMHC's Housing Design Catalog. These are sensible, small-scale designs that would add to the character of our downtown rather than take away from it. Next slide, please. We also need to have a conversation about parking. I know it's not what every councillor wants to talk about, but the reality is that our current zoning bylaw has very elevated off-street parking requirements, which assume that everyone in the city can drive, can afford to drive, or even wants to drive. This makes our city less walkable, makes transit less viable, and increases congestion as the car becomes the only or the dominant way that people can get to work. We know that the official plan began the conversation about reducing some off-street parking requirements, and Fusion builds on this idea by suggesting that there should be no requirement for parking in off-street parking in residential zones, particularly for dwelling units. That's not to say we're calling for the end of parking by any means. If you change those rules today, you'll still have the same number of parking spots tomorrow. But what you've done is you've taken away an arbitrary rule that says, oh, we absolutely need to have these many spots at an absolute minimum because that's the way we've always done things. Instead, you're actually giving more freedom to property owners in your wards to make better use of their land, to add affordable units, add additional dwelling units, and to make development a little more affordable by ensuring that, particularly in the downtown core, you don't have to pay in to the costly cash in lieu payment system for parking spot removal. And if you pair this with a reorientation of on-street parking and the earmarking of meter revenue for public transit operations, you can take real steps to improve the affordability, the flow, and the safety of transportation through the downtown core. All of these measures will make for more customers downtown and a better experience for the area's businesses, workers, and residents. Next slide, please. A final area where Fusion has been vocal is ensuring that the new zoning code is free of any poison pills that can make new fourplexes legal on paper, but not really feasible due to hidden fees or rules. There's a risk that we keep the existing, say, setback or height requirements that box a project in so they can't even get built in the first place. So this is something we did stress in our letter to the minister, where the Minister of Housing, Land and Communities, then Minister Myers, when outlining our conditional support for the official plan. There was the last minute addition of the words "as appropriate" to the section on fourplexes, and Fusion maintains the view that in the absence of a clear definition, the addition of the words "as appropriate" was not appropriate for that sort of a document. We recognize that there are reasons to put guardrails on development, such as in flood risk areas, but we think that that can be addressed through climate resilient designs rather than sort of a blanket kind of vague caveat that could potentially undercut development to begin with. And lastly, we'd urge the city to not introduce a development charge on townhouse and apartment projects, and instead work with other orders of government to secure new funding to enable the housing that Charlottetown needs. And I'm happy to discuss some ideas about that in the question and answer period. But to the final slide, please, for a second. In closing, I hope that these recommendations give you a good idea of where to take the zoning and development bylaw. The official plan that was approved by council already demonstrates the willingness of folks in this room to have a strong vision and principle. And if you follow some of our recommendations for the bylaw phase, you'll be showing that dedication in practice as well. So with that, I thank you for listening, and I'm happy to take your questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Matt. Really well articulated. I'm just gonna open it up to committee, and you can bypass me and just ask whoever you need to ask questions, and we can have a fulsome conversation. So just opening it up.
Can I just start off?
Yes, absolutely.
Just at his final point, avoid the introduction of development charges. We've already taken capital recovery charges off the books. That was to be a bylaw, because federal housing recommendations or suggestions was that this was slowing down growth, so we would already dealt with it and made the changes, and those changes are, leave it as is. But as of right in areas with known flood risks, so we have a downtown and we have a waterfront that is very exposed to flooding. And if you look at some of the development on the waterfront, they're taking into account ground level parking that acts as a flood zone or a flood chamber. So I think that is where we have to go. We're a coastal city, and we have to, get ourselves, around the idea that we're gonna have flooding, and we just have to know how to deal with it. And you said you talked to the minister. Was that Minister Myers when you made this presentation?
We submitted a letter to Minister Myers and we hadn't heard back.
Did you meet with him personally?
No, we did not. We didn't meet with him.
So where did you get the as appropriate? Did they come back with?
We haven't heard anything, and we haven't heard anything about the status of the official plans
No,
approval to begin with.
we
haven't
submitted it to them
Yeah,
back in, Madam Chair, was it July? And I think we have a meeting coming up with the new minister on the 15th of this month. To speak to, but it hasn't been finalized, we're waiting for the finalize. That's why I raised it, just to say, we're waiting, it's tentative.
Thank you.
So
I have a printed copy of it here for reference as
that's the
well.
letter, okay.
That was our letter, yes.
You sent us that, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I did, yes, and I can send it again. Yeah.
But you didn't meet with him in person?
No.
No. So it sounds like there's an issue with as appropriate with Fusion and maybe with the government, is that,
We have,
can you just,
we haven't heard anything from the minister on anything to do with the official plan at all.
and with Fusion, you just wanted hard and fast, take that out, just as of right is what we should be saying.
In the absence of a definition, that was an area of concern for us. That being said, if it's something that could be potentially mitigated through a definition, much clearer definition in the zoning development bylaw, I think that would put our team a little more at ease. But that's just where we are standing right now, is our main area of just.
And I do believe that was the intent, was to really zero in on the definition of that in the zoning and development bylaw, which was why it was, in fact, I think it was Councillor Beck that spearheaded it, to have that put back into the official plan with the assumption that it would be really zoned in on in the zoning and development bylaw. But I didn't mean to cut you off. You go.
No, I was just gonna say the same thing, and the idea was that when we were going through a housing accelerator fund application process. Part of that requirement was that we said that we are going to have public consultation with the public, extensive, once that goes through, which we did with the official plan, which we're gonna do with the zoning and development bylaw. So in the absence, to not stall the process, we wanted to put that in to identify that we wanted to have those discussions and that would get delineated or further broken down as we went down into the next phase. So it's almost deliberately vague at this point with a lacking definition, because we haven't had the ability to have that definition or clarification shaped. It's kind of what.
Yeah, and that's why it was an area that just the absence of a definition, that's where it was kind of just, it's been uneasy with us that
Yeah.
as a public can mean a lot of things to a lot of people.
Sure.
And that was why we just felt the need that just, this is something that we elevated, and we were speaking to media about it, and just that this is something that we, it may end up being a nothing burger in the end, where, we end up getting a definition that is just pretty innocuous in the end. But there's a risk that it does create cover for, when I spoke, if you look at the chart, for instance, on screen there, that I added in our slide, I'm just looking up.
13,
Slide 13, yeah, if we could just bump back to is it 13? Slide 13?
well, it's page 13.
Page 13,
So just go
ooh,
back to page 13.
the bar chart slide, that would be the next, 2 or 3 over maybe.
Keep going, keep going.
There we are, yes. That it could give cover to potentially opposite, just that 40% category, creating kind of a tougher definition that would make it impossible to build in the areas where they make sense to do. And I say that as someone who lives in a fourplex myself, we've got medical professionals in that building, we've got contractors, we've got people who are contributing to the city and the region's economy, and I think these structures and the people who live in them, they add to the character of the neighborhood and rather than take away from it. So I think it does create a lot of opportunities for families. So that's why we stress concern around the as appropriate term.
So just to follow up on that, Madam Chair. So, Matt, you have researched it. Have you researched other municipalities, Moncton, Fredericton, that have already gone through this process? Have you seen this before as appropriate? This is the first time? Like, I'm trying to find out, are we copying from someone else, or we just organically put that in there to find a path forward so that when we get to the zoning development bylaw, we'll be able to, I don't know if we'll define it, I think either we keep it, which I don't think we can under HVAC, Housing Accelerator Fund is very clear, is that this has to be dealt with. So have you?
We haven't seen it, nor have we looked.
In other municipalities,
No,
like
no.
Fredericton's already gone through this process, they have as of right 4 units, Summerside.
With provisions.
Hmm?
With provisions.
There are some communities, I will say, that have, for instance, gone for higher as of right,
Sixplexes.
sixplexes, with the exception of lots that were just simply too small to sustain it. I'm thinking of communities up north where they, I believe Yellowknife was one of the first ones to do kind of a blanket rezoning of all their residential. I think they did it even before Toronto did it in 2023.
Well, but Ontario is different, because Ontario, the whole province is as of right 4 to 6, the whole province.
Yes, and this was before the provincial measures came in, and the city of Toronto took its steps, I believe, before the province kind of put its kind of foot down. But I'm thinking of a community like Yellowknife that did it. It was one of the earliest kind of earliest sort of pioneers in this space. They did create a caveat for lot sizes that were too small to have. If it was simply like a skinny lot or a tiny little lot that could literally only do one structure, or
Right.
or a duplex or something like that, or a stacked townhouse situation, then that was considered.
But I think that would go back to our professional planners that would say, you can't fit 4 units on this property. Like, there's just no way you can do it. But provisions, is that what Fredericton has, provisions in their bylaw? Okay, so that's something we can look at for our zoning development bylaw.
Sure.
I think that's the intent, is that it will have to be clearly defined so that the residents of Charlottetown completely understand that what does 4 units as of right actually mean? And, I'm just, surmising what that might look like in our zoning and development bylaw. But it could be a list of criteria, you're like, your lot size must be, 1/8 of an acre, or it has to be a 1/4,
Yeah.
or you
Yeah.
must be here, or you must, you must have ample parking in your driveway, or you
Right.
must have space in your backyard for I'm just making that up.
Yeah.
We just don't know what that
Yeah.
is yet, because we haven't embarked yet on defining that in our zoning
Yeah, well,
development.
but Councillor Beck said there are provisions in the Fredericton bylaw, so, hey,
Yeah.
we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
No, that's right, we can
Right,
have a
we
look at
can-
it, yeah.
And
And we also have to wait for community input on what we hear from them when we have these public meetings for
But
zoning
but
development.
shouldn't we have provisions in the presentation
I would
for these public consultations?
think, I
Right.
don't know.
Michael, I'm just
That's
asking
a-
you.
that's
So-
my question.
For clarity for everyone at this point in the process, staff are internally reviewing the draft zoning and development bylaw that's been developed by the consulting team that is assisting with the project. That draft document has really been, I guess, the the direction of that document is coming from the feedback from that last round of engagement and so on. And so the intent here is to hopefully have a draft document that illustrates that feedback from the community that we're gonna go back out and show the community again and see if, what we heard from them, meets their expectations or if we need to do some further tweaking. So that'll be coming up in the next, I would say, we're gearing for the next month and a half to get out for that next round of engagement.
So, Madam Chair, just for clarification, we're going out with what, is it Fathom Studios that's doing our zoning? So we're going out with their proposed draft, which might link us to as appropriate. Get the feedback and then make the provisions, is that what you're saying?
That's correct. So based on the feedback that we've received to date, so the last round of engagement, there were some conceptual ideas shown on how the 4 units could potentially work in the city of Charlottetown, and we're trying to get feedback from the public on what the form, what the size of lot, all these factors, how it all plays into the final result. And so we're working with the team right now to try and finalize that regulatory approach to test in our next round of engagement with the public to see if that meets their expectation, or if not, then we'll take that feedback from the next round of engagement and tweak it further.
Okay. Well, I keep saying this, we have to keep going up, we can't keep going up, we just don't have the space. We're always known as the 1 million acre farm. That 1 million acres now down to the 550,000 acres because of erosion and development. So I agree with Matt, higher in the core areas, nodes use the 4 to 6, but this 4 unit per PID, we have to really take that and, I'd like to have the provisions already in place before we go to zoning development, public consultation. Have them there, to just say, here's where it would apply.
And again, to clarify, that is the intent. There is a set of rules that have been developed from the last round of feedback. That feedback was used to create those rules to then test in that next round of engagement and see if those rules are what the public wants to see here, or if they want to see further changes in another draft to come.
Is that available yet for the public to see, or is that?
Not at this point. Again, we're in the final stages of reviewing that draft document internally, at which point we'll be gearing up for that next round of engagement, I would say in the next month or month and a half.
It'd be great if we could have our eyes on that even before you went out, just so we could see what,
So we prepared as council,
Yeah.
Yeah.
what you're looking at.
for
And,
sure.
at
Yeah.
that point, your worship,
Yeah,
we
council.
That's a committee of the whole meeting.
Yeah, council can't be broadsided on that one, we have to, for sure, yeah.
Well, and I think we've had a lot of discussion around, when you use those definitions and those terms and trying to still push things ahead with comfort, because change is hard for some, so we have to be really mindful. And it's great to see the young people in Charlottetown becoming proactive and getting out ahead of this and providing their information, but we have a lot of people also that are gonna be resistant, so it's to try to find that balance where people are feeling that they're all being heard, so. Collaboration and trying to get the best information. And getting people to these engagements, so get your people out there. Mhm.
May not always agree, Madam Chair, Mr. McCabe and I, but I do agree with, the youth component is gonna be very important.
This is their future.
I think youth is our future, and Matt, I really thank you for the presentation, but I still have a couple more questions. So your data,
Yes,
is it based on 100, 200, how many people?
I would defer to the city on that one. That was from
Okay.
the What We Heard report, about the zoning bylaw consultation. That's where I pulled that chart from.
This one right here.
This one here, the StatCan stuff, I can tell you a bit more about that one up there if you have any questions. That was the projections of the age.
What's this one from?
It'd be from the city
That was-
reports, yes.
So
It's from the public engagement
Yes.
sessions?
Yes. I don't know what the sample size necessarily was for that one, but That's what-
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on what the sample size was from this particular document, but we can bring that back.
Yeah, cause I'd like to ask, could we look at age, or could we look at, I know, we don't always, we have to be careful how we use wording, gender, right? Income, you have to look at all those factors. They are determinants for what the data will show. Like, data's great to have, but where did the input come from? That's the key. And as for the parking, Matt, I think we're gonna deal with it. I thought we were talking about parking would be not a priority. That it would be up to the builder. Right? Am I wrong in saying that?
I don't think we've defined.
We didn't have the discussion yet, I don't think.
So again, I'm hesitant to speak for council on this, but as part of our contract with CMHC, one of the initiatives that the city did agree to implement was
Off the eight.
consideration of reduction of our parking requirements in the new zoning and development bylaw, so that's something that our team, as part of this overall effort for the bylaw, is looking to fulfill, whether that's a full elimination of parking requirements across the city or in all residential areas as is being suggested, is something that obviously we want to hear more from the public on, and council will need to weigh in on as well.
Yeah, so that was one of the 8 initiatives that we agreed to, that when we submitted our application with the Housing Accelerator Fund. That was, and if the chair represents the 500 lots, and then we have a councillor in the north end of, the north of Houston that represents areas that have residential parking. Like all this parking issue is up for grabs. If we want to fulfill or address or deal with the housing initiative, I don't know what number it is, but it was in one of the 8.
Well, wasn't there 4-story apartments within 800 meters of the QEH, Hillsborough, UPI, or Allen College? That was in there too.
Correct.
As was the dwellings of 10 stories of right now growth nodes and the 6 stories of right in all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there was any problem with, I don't remember any problem with those.
I think we had one council that was concerned about experimental farm and being too close to the university. But again,
That was clarified though.
that was clarified. We'll have to clarify it again, I'm sure, to residents when we go to public consultation.
Can I just ask a question on page 12, Matt, about 6-unit structures in medium density areas and 4-story apartments in higher density areas? What would be a medium density? Where would a medium density area be, and what would a higher density area be?
It's a good question. So what we've noticed is, particularly in some of the concept maps for the zoning and development bylaw, for the new zoning and development bylaw, there was a sort of an examination of 3 sort of tiers of residential zones. So a low density, a medium, and a high density scenario. And a lot of that was, I think particularly you would see it as in and around North River Road. That's what stood out to me as the areas that had been previously identified as potential, medium or, and I regret not including the map for this one and all that, but it was based on my kind of examination and at the consultation at the library. I wanna say that was in the fall or the summer. That was being kind of floated as an idea and all that.
What would a higher density area have been? What would you be referring to there?
Essentially anything that didn't have, say, a commercial, that was sort of in, say, near a growth node or near a growth corridor without being the corridors or nodes themselves, but having a kind of a high stock of residential in those areas. I'm thinking of examples, say, you look around the bypass and there's the new kind of, it was Martha's Place, like the new developments that are there, which are 4-story apartments. And some on Sherwood Road, if you go kind of west of University Avenue, you've got some 4-story apartments there that the Arsenault brothers are doing. I think there's some 5-story ones in there too now. So it stood out to me as just, those are examples of high density residential.
Okay.
They're not downtown, they're not near a university or or health institute. That just struck me as, that sort of makes sense for those sorts of cascading. But obviously, kind of meeting with the conversation that the official plan also alluded to, having a kind of a cascading structure from that low density to anything of higher order zoning, whether that is a medium high density residential, or whether that's your downtown core, or whether that's your you're in and around, your kind of bubble around post-secondary, let's say, or something like that.
Okay. The corner stores and small ground level retail in residential areas. I live in Brighton, I have one,
Clover Farm? it's-
Brighton,
yeah.
which is a cornerstone of our neighborhood, really.
It is.
Been there for, well, at least 65 years. Or I've been in that neighborhood for 62 years, and it's been there as long as I've been around. And I'm not 62, by the way.
You're older.
I'm a little bit older. Yeah. Just in case you said, people are doing the math over there. I'm saying, okay, Norman, get it right here. But anyway, it's an interesting concept because services closer to home, I mean, it's a change, it kind of going piggybacking on what Councilor McCabe was saying, it's a change, but if I think of where my buddy lives in Toronto, in the east end of Toronto. He lives in a highly residential area with very mixed, very mixed, there's commercial, there's small grocery stores, there's small pubs, and it works, but that's Toronto. I'm not comparing Charlottetown to Toronto. And it's in an older part of Toronto, and it's just, that's the way it's been. As Brighton has been in part of the fabric of Ward 3 or Brighton area. Now, if we go to implement something new, Brighton Grocery is an exception, it's an anomaly, and it's bred into the community. Anything new would be a change to that fabric. What would that? What would you see that looking like? Like, how would you see that unfolding?
It's a good question. I'd actually preface it with a general question. To your knowledge, is there anyone that doesn't like that corner store?
Oh no, I don't think I've never hear anyone. And I'm not speaking in opposition to it.
No.
I think I see some potential benefit to it. The change, the thing is, how does that get integrated?
Yeah.
It's kind of where I'm at, and I don't know, like, I don't think it's a terrible idea. But I just don't know how it would happen, and because to answer your question, we love Brighton Grocery. Even,
I love Brighton Grocery too.
yeah, everyone does, right? So, but do residents want other Brighton groceries in the neighborhood or in Ward 10? Do they want these sorts of things? I have no idea.
So
I can't speak for them.
It's a good question because I can say from personal experience, in the two apartments that I've lived downtown in the past 4 years, I was privileged to have Hasham's within less than a 2-minute walk from where I am, and then about 2 to 5 minute walk for me now is Black and White Convenience, which is over on King and Hillsborough, I believe. Those are good fixtures of the community.
Again, longstanding.
Yeah, longstanding, of course,
Longstanding parts of the fabrics of the society or of the neighborhood. Been there forever. Yeah.
I think people do gravitate to these in general, though, and I say this particularly the landscape of a lot of our residential areas, and I think of the downtown area in particular, not having, say, a major grocery store of any sort, unless you kind of get in the car and go to, No Frills in Stratford or kind of go up to Sobeys. In the absence of that in the downtown core, I think people really like having those nearby, and they also kind of have their own niche thing they also do too. I mean, I
They
think.
also offer a real sense of community.
Yeah. The Black and White Convenience has a kitchen, so they do shawarma and they do kind of canteen food, and then Hasham's is a shoe store with a grocery store on the side, with a convenience store on the side or something like that. But these are kind of examples of businesses that they bring their own sort of charm to an area and all that. And I think they can be novel at first. Once upon a time, all those stores, even 60 years ago, would have been new at one point or another as well, right? And so there, you know, I think they can grow on people after a while.
So would it be the sort of thing that if I had my home and I wanted to make that, I don't know, a beauty salon, or I wanted to, would I have the right to automatically flip that over to a hair salon, or would I just, would I have to go through some kind of process with that? Or is it an as of right thing where, say, this is my property, I don't want it to be my, I'm gonna keep, kind of do what Norman did. Norman lived on the second floor, still does.
A lot of those grandfathered in, you know, they were pre-amalgamation, and so I think now.
But that's exactly my
I know.
point.
Yeah,
That's exactly my
they
point,
aren't
is that
like
we're
that
not,
anymore.
Because they wouldn't be
we're
able
not
to-
talking about components of our society, components of our neighborhood. We're talking about changing the neighborhood that it is there. So that's kind of where I think it's great to have that concept, but how does that unfold? How does it go from being in a predominantly residential area, how does it go from being a residence to now a commercial, or a small corner store, or small ground level retail?
I think the uptake would be limited, and I say that because not everyone's gonna wanna start a business in their house. For what it's worth though, there are people who do kind of say like the Etsy market style or Instagram kind of like business where they do kind of run something out of their house just on a more kind of covert basis, or they might do haircuts in their houses or something like.
We're starting to see we've seen a lot more home-based operation requests come in for more recently. We've dealt with them quite a bit in the last little bit, so, you know, they've had to go through a process, right? So what would that new process be, or is there a new process that would have to be undertaken? That's kind of, I think that would have to be kind of with the 4 units as of right, that would have to be clarified, this is how it would work. It's either it's your property, do with it as you wish, or you have to follow some kind of process along.
And it could be much in the same way, looking at different kind of case municipalities for what does provisions mean. Much in the same way, we could look for best practices from different cities who have kind of gone forward on a new approach to whether it's home businesses, whether it's corner stores, something to, you know, it's something that sort of like what's been the effect and how has it sort of brought people together and all that. But yeah, you know, it's a great question, and there's a lot of room for implementation exploration too.
In some of the terms, Michael, you've mentioned it before, the mess and middle, gentle infill, right? Gentle infill is about bringing in, and I keep them on my phone just to refer to them, can save our neighborhood. So it's mixed use, which includes commercial, correct? With these two types of gentle infill and middle, is that correct?
Yeah, so I think
That's
the
what
point that is being made here is that we wanna explore neighborhoods within the city that have amenities that support everyone living
Yeah.
within that area. So you don't necessarily need to jump into a car to get your daily
Yeah.
groceries or your weekly groceries, whatever it is.
Yes.
What was the terminology about the land out there by York Jewels? It was gonna become a community village or something like that?
It's called the East Royalty,
No, but what's there's a term for that, it would be.
Mixed use, was it the,
Complete community or something?
no, it's the village, in East Royalty, it's part of the East Royalty plan.
Lowest property.
I can't recall.
But that's more commercial.
But it's kind of what Mike's saying, what they wanted to do, because there's been so much expansion out there, they wanted to have mixed-use opportunities within that area. When they presented to us, that's what they were presenting, was the concept.
when
I
we
can't- I
went through
can't
the
remember
zoning
the-
of that land, it was going to allow
It was
for
gonna allow for
different,
very
Yes.
much mixed, commercial, residential, whole kind of hodgepodge on a newly created land that is not,
right, cause there
that's
was
to
no
be
zoning,
developed.
yeah.
There is no zoning.
No, there is zoning for that area, it's called the East Royalty Master Plan. And under that master plan that was passed back in 2016 or something like that, it allows for this I'm
Yes,
gonna
but
search.
the new annexed land that we did with
Yeah.
we had to go and put zoning on that land because,
There's no zoning on it yet, it's all
Right.
CDA.
so there's still, that's what I'm saying, that it's still, they're still working on that.
But to follow up, there are terms, the miss and middle, density, or the
It's right here.
gentle infilling initiatives that we can use as part of this discussion on our zoning development bylaw. And again, you bring up some good points, Matt, these are the terms that we should be floating out there so that we can get more input to say that it's not just about backhoes and excavators going down neighborhood streets to tear down single-family dwellings. It's about improving neighborhoods by making them more mixed use, rather than being exclusively R1, R2. That's what you're talking about. Those exclusive neighborhoods is where we're looking at 2 units or maximum 4 units.
Well, I think what we've heard thus far through the official plan process and even through these early stages with some of the key stakeholders like Matt, is that folks want access to different housing options across that housing spectrum.
Right.
Rather than seeing a continued trend of building, single detached dwellings and apartment buildings. We wanna offer options to folks across different ages and abilities to have a housing option that suits their specific needs.
Right.
And it was the East Royalty Mixed Use Village
The
Center.
zone.
And it was just prior to where the land beside our newly annexed land is
Yeah.
still not zoned.
Yeah, it's not zoned. That's what I think they wanted zoned, so it's more for commercial use. And I think the city's trying to get some of that land for green space and sports fields. That was another, I know the council from the other side of the road would like to see some more sporting venues out there.
Yeah.
In this new
Oh, yes,
annex
in the
property.
in East Royalty.
But, guys, like, Matt, I think the chair already mentioned it to you once or twice. When these zoning development bylaw public consultations come up, you guys have to show up to, shout from the rooftop that, look, we're the future, this is how we envision it, we need more housing, we don't want, we can live in 4 units, 6 units, but we need housing that accommodates not only our, purposes, but of all ages. Old, young, new Canadians.
And the great thing is with modern technology now, those folks that, maybe aren't able to get out, whether they have mobility issues or not, the joy now is that they can remote in or they can send their information to the staff, so they don't have to physically show up, as long as they get their information, in there during the public consultation process.
Right.
Whether they remote in, whether they send an email, or come in person.
And I think, Madam Chair, the miss and middle concept is that Lori and I live in a house, 3 bedrooms, 2 of us. At some point in time, we're mid-60s, we're gonna have to move down, move somewhere else. We'd like to stay in our neighborhood. Well, hopefully there's gonna be a townhouse or an apartment building, which there are, that we can move in, so we're not moving out of our neighborhood.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that's part of gentle infill or miss and middle.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm looking at, and I think that's what Matt's saying, is that we share that space with young, old, new Canadians, traditional Canadians, we're a village within a village.
But that's getting that, as Councillor McCabe alluded to earlier, ensuring we find that balance, because we're still getting some resistance. We've seen files that have come through there where, applications for turning a duplex into a triplex, and you're getting people that are resisting that, but that's a perfect example of, if it was turned into a triplex, there's something that you could rent and stay in your community. But there's still a lot of resistance when it comes to those types of things, so it's getting that communication out there and finding that balance. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions for?
I have
Yes,
to leave here
yes.
before 6 o'clock, sorry, I got another commitment I gotta be to. I do have a question on page 15, Matt. Under the form-based code for the 500 lot area,
Yeah,
you
for sure.
provided some pictures there to slot in. Would that picture have been, would that be an example from that housing design catalog that
Yeah.
you were talking about? Okay. So under the first bullet, you said focus on built form, social and structural heritage, and the streetscape contributions of the application rather than the applicant's intended use. What do you mean by the intended use part?
I think for the sake of a form-based code rather than a use-based code is that it's all about emphasizing that kind of the heritage heritage aesthetic, keeping the structure, keeping the setback, keeping the similar kind of layout that was in the existing area. That it becomes less of an emphasis about it becomes less of the emphasis of this was a single detached home. Well, now you can say do a duplex in that structure, but keeping that frontage that kind of matches the neighboring buildings or you're focusing more on, I guess, I'll call it the vibes, if that makes any sense, focusing on because I say this as someone who lives very close to, say, Sydney and Richmond Street. I get it. Having spent a lot of the last few months walking around in those neighborhoods, in that neighborhood, I get it. I can see why there's such an appeal, and yeah, it does rub off on me too. After a while, but say, I can.
Rubs off on everybody.
It does. It does. See, there, and it's an economic appeal. It's a tourism appeal too. So, but allowing that, because you can have those sorts of styles of designs. I'm thinking of also like the widow's walk kind of structure, the beautiful kind of architectural kind of features in a lot of these buildings here, but still allow them to be fourplexes, or still allow them to be a 4-story apartment rather than a 3-story apartment, or allow them to have ground level corner stores, as we were talking about earlier.
So if it was a single, if it had previously been R1L or R1N or R1 whatever, we could adopt some of these things, maintain the character, focus on the character of the building, as opposed to what's going inside the building, and allow that, that would be a gentle infill of saying, okay, we're still gonna focus on that structural, character, streetscape, but allow for more people to enjoy the structure, the heritage, and the streetscape.
That would generally be the objective that we're looking at with that, and it's also one that can be, I will say, broader from the financial aspect of a lot of this too, is that this does this will create kind of new property tax paying households. If you have additional units, it'll create kind of value at that unit, which will then sort of stabilize your tax base for property taxes and make it easier to service anything that the municipality needs to provide in those neighborhoods too. It'll act as sort of a net contributor to the overall general revenue tax base for the city when you have those sort of multifamily approaches, and because of the just general appeal that this has to people both who've grown up in Charlottetown, who live in Charlottetown, who have come from away, such as myself, or who have visiting, that it actually creates sort of there's a benefit for everyone here to have that, the interest in seeing these structures, to paying for businesses in the area, for services, being able to walk around it. It really adds to a high quality of life.
And then back to your parking discussion, is that, you don't wanna end up with so much congestion on the streets of, some of these homes in those areas don't have ample parking space, but instead getting creative and saying hopefully you don't have a car because you can't park on the street either, because we can't have our lawn parking, and you see that sometimes in the Royalty, there's so much gentle infill happening, there's nowhere to park, that all of a sudden as counselors, we're getting the complaints that the streets are so congested with parking, or people are parking on their lawns and stuff like that, so it's taking away from the look and feel of the community. So getting creative, and whether people are parking in car parks, or maybe, like you say, a lot of people aren't choosing to have cars because you're doing transit and stuff.
Vehicle ownership among Gen Z is generally lower than it is among millennials or Gen X or baby boomer. So there is already sort of a demographic trend kind of pointing to that already. I think we can lean into that, and it has to kind of be the both have to happen at the same time. The transit has to improve at the same time that the rules on parking requirements get.
The AT has to improve.
Yes, absolutely as well. Yes, so essentially all these pieces sort of have to happen kind of together, so that a new family who moves in, they may be a 1-car household, or they may be a no-car household. They have that alternative there at their disposal.
And I think what the chair just described was Elena Court. Elena
Yes.
Court, which is off Norwood Road.
I know it, yes.
Lots of parking space, but lots of parking that take place in the street, so
Yeah.
you can have the parking spaces, you're still gonna have the parking issues. But on the secondary units, we have secondary apartments that are, as of right, across the city, correct? We have ADUs, you still have to deal with that because to have an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, you have to be 1.5 acres or over. We-
0.5.
Sorry, 0.5 acres, but we have to change that, that has to be changed, and I think that's what we're talking about. And under the half, I think we have what, 150 units that would be subsidized under this ADU initiative? At $10,000, if anyone was to,
300 first, 300 units.
300 units we're looking at, wow. At, what's the grant to each?
Use 10,000.
Of 10,000.
So it's gonna be 3 million instead of 1.5. And the reason I bring that up, Madam Chair, because I spoke to a resident who lives out in West Riley, and he was not too happy that his neighbor added a secondary unit. He built his house there 20 years ago, and it was built as an R1. And why is our neighborhood changing? So this is what we have to deal with, like, we have to get ready to deal with the changes that will be coming forth. And, you know, the R1s, the R2s, are we gonna keep those zonings? Like, that's the questions we're gonna be facing when we go forward on this plan and presenting it to the public at the public consultation.
And there could be things like tax incentives for, I don't even, like, there has to be some balance, as Councilor McCabe has said. That, you know, we have to find the balance, but we also have to engage the public to get their input out there and work on this as a collective. Because if it's not being done to you and it's done with you, it's always a better process if you're all doing it together. Any more questions for Matt?
Great presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just really appreciate it, you coming
Thank
in.
you. Stay around.
Yeah, all right,
Thank you for
Yeah.
inviting me in, I'm glad I was able to get in for the,
yeah.
for this, I know that we were trying to schedule something in December, I'm really glad that we could get in and present, so I appreciate it.
I'll be encouraging our other counselors to take a listen to the live stream, because this was a really good presentation and,
And good
Thank-
questions too.
yeah, and then in the future, I would see this more as coming through committee of a whole once we have that sorted, because this would have been a great presentation for the entire council to hear, so. Thank heavens for live stream, playback.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, great. So we can move on to,
Sorry, I got
yes,
it.
you, thank you, Councillor Beck. So we're just going to move on to, introduction of new business. And, His Worship has had a number of items that he's outlined, and, maybe we'll have staff address these in whether they can, provide updates at the next meeting, or how that might,
You know.
come to be. So I can turn those items over to Mike.
Just before you do that,
Yes.
Michael, when I go through the budget here, salaries and benefits, admin assistant planning, is that the Melissa? There's two.
There's two admin positions within the department, so
Okay.
one of those positions is vacant. So
Yes.
that was one of your
Questions?
questions.
And under the zoning development bylaw enforcement officer, is that under salaries and benefits? It's not building inspector, it's not heritage officer,
I don't have that document in front of me right now, but we can certainly bring that back.
okay. So, what I've listed off, like, the second zoning development bylaw enforcement officer, are we looking, we got a timeline?
Did you want me to just go in order from your
Great,
questions
please.
earlier?
Yeah,
Please.
that'd
I
be
just
great, thanks,
wrote them
Mike.
all down.
Thank you.
So the review of the zoning and development bylaw, like I mentioned earlier, staff are in the final stages of the internal review. So we really wanna, polish document, so that all of our input internally is fleshed out so that we are able to answer questions when we get out to that next round of engagement, and we wanna make sure that we have fulsome discussion with the respective department heads that all have part to play in our development review process, such as public works, engineering, environment and sustainability, and others. Like I said earlier, we're hoping to get out for that next round of engagement in the next month and a half. Sebastian's nodding. The
And
second.
so would you be looking at providing something, Sebastian, to members of council on that first draft before it does go out?
Oh, we have to
Let
have
us-
that.
That's what I'm
It
asking.
has to come to committee.
Let
to-
us
to
take
council
that
first.
back, if the intent is to schedule, or if committee's wish is to schedule committee of the whole or another
Yeah.
committee meeting to review that draft before it goes out to the next round of engagement, we'll just need to figure out when we can do that and make sure that ultimately this will all impact our timeline for the project, so. But again, our wish is not to rush this project by any means. If the wish of committee is to have another session with council to review the work done to date before we take that next step, we can
It's a
certainly
lot of
explore that.
information, Mike, and I think it's really good to break it into chunks so that we're understanding where we are personally, you know, this is your everyday stuff. So for people that it's not their everyday stuff, I think it's good to chunk it so that we're making sure we really comprehend what's.
And also, it's the counselors that get the questions from the residents, so they should be prepared and informed prior to. I mean, it would be an open meeting, so the public can listen too at the same time.
I would say that we wouldn't wanna give direction to staff to change the work that's been done before they go out, but it's good information to hear,
Just
and
to
then
hear
you
it.
can take it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that would be what you're concerned, that you're gonna bring it in and we're gonna say, oh no, we don't want this, we don't want this,
An information
prior to
session.
it going to the public.
Information session,
Yeah, but
We
it's
could have
just
an information.
where you're at and no changes until after the public consultation.
100%, yeah.
And Michael, are you concerned about by doing that first presentation on the first draft, that is already releasing the information, like, would it be preferable to have an information session? And go over it?
You could look at any options that you prefer. I mean, if council's wish is to have an information session or a working session to get a feel of what that new document looks like, the draft version of it. I mean, we can certainly explore that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if it's an educational session, then it can be done during an educational time.
Changed now, information sessions. They're gone, education's gone.
Okay, information, yeah,
Okay.
okay.
So your second question was just an update on our enforcement
Yes.
position. So I think we had chatted about this at a previous committee meeting a little while ago. So the CAO's office and myself have continued discussions on this. We're looking to move forward further information with council for consideration of how we can basically have a more resilient bylaw enforcement service rather than having, one position solely dedicated to that. So, when we do have turnover, we're able to continue that service. So there will be more information coming on that in the near future.
So was Elizabeth's job just dedicated to STRs?
No, it was all planning and heritage related.
And is Todd Sutcliffe's just related to zoning development
Police.
bylaw?
Everything else.
The
Yeah,
policing.
so the current bylaw enforcement officer has been assisting the team with, the planning and development department's needs in the interim. And we have an ongoing partnership with the province as well, related to STRs. So, at the end of the day, it's all a team and we wanna make sure that we're trying to maintain a certain service level, but we are looking to improve that service level, so that we're providing a better service for the
So
community.
it would require training in different areas, correct?
That's right.
Is that what you're saying? And you want these zoning development enforcement officers to be trained in a number of areas rather than just one specific, more of a holistic. Okay,
That would generally be the idea. I feel like I'm kind of giving away all the information
No, you're not
already,
giving too
but
much away.
we will have more information coming for council's consideration very shortly. Your third item was just on the administrative support status. Like I said, that position is still vacant. We've been actively looking to fill that position. We don't have an update at this point, but we'll hopefully have that position filled as soon as possible.
Has
But-
it gone out? Is HR? I didn't see
It
it.
was posted, unfortunately, we haven't been able to fill it, just yet, but, like I said, we'll have more information as soon as possible.
Again, the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, they're not meeting because they don't, like Melissa can't be handling that, taking phone calls and, you know, ordering food for committees. Like, we just need someone there to help with the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, and I think they wanna get back
Yeah,
in the meeting.
yeah.
Yeah, we're very thankful to have Melissa
We are.
helping us through this
Well done, Melissa.
interim period where she's the one person helping out the entire department.
One-person show.
So really appreciate her efforts through these last couple of months. Heritage Preservation Bylaw update, so that work is ongoing. I don't have a fulsome update today, but we can certainly bring that back at the next committee meeting or even council meeting. While Sebastian's here, he's kind of spearheading the pre-approved housing initiative, which Matt kind of touched on in his presentation. I don't know if you want to give a brief update on the current status.
That went out to tender, Sebastian?
Pardon?
Did that go out to tender?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So currently, we're at the stage where the consultants, Upland, they are finalizing the detailed floor plans for the ADUs, duplexes, and 1.5 units. We will reconvene next week to send these designs out to for costing, so that by the end of January, we can come back to the public and present what we have based on their feedback. So the wheels of progress are turning.
And I had to, so we had a great chat, cause I went to the open house and I thought it was well done. So selfishly looking at, other opportunities, you know, the federal government are pushing this accelerated housing fund down, that's across the board. They're wanting everybody and they're telling us what we have to put into these, and they had this promise of like, they were going to support people to try to do this. There was gonna be a, you know, low interest loan up to a maximum of so much money, and they haven't rolled any of their own stuff out. Mind you, the city here is doing this 10 million, you know, 10 million, what is it, $10,000 and whatever, which is really great that we're doing that as a city. But the federal government is pushing us so hard with this accelerated housing movement, and they talk and they promote these programs that would make it attainable. Cause even though these homes are there and they're wonderful, they're not cheap for young people who are starting out to try to be able to. So we have to find ways to put some pressure somewhere to say, if you want this, you have to work with us too. Find some means for some of this. So I just wanted to say that out loud.
We had a meeting yesterday and the initial cost, the average cost for one of those units was about 300,000
Yeah.
thereabout. But we are looking at ways to reduce that cost
Yeah,
without compromising on insulation efforts.
right.
Yeah,
Well,
so-
they're pretty small, so for $300,000, it's not a real, you're not gonna, I wouldn't think, and maybe I'm wrong, you're young, you can start and say, that's not a great incentive for young people to be able to afford that. Start out. We need to find ways better to support those people trying to start out. And not, this isn't us, this is, do we push the next levels of government who are pushing us and telling us, you want this money, this is what you have to do. But now we have to work to support the people that we're trying to get them to do. Anyway, I'll rant about that another time, thank you.
Next thing on the list, I think, was the
STR.
STR.
Yeah, so the STR owner requirements, we can certainly bring some information back on that. The taxation piece, you know, obviously anytime there's an improvement on a
Yeah.
property, there's going to be a taxation impact. Hasn't been the practice of any municipality that I've worked at where we're advising people of what that taxation impact would be, given it's not our jurisdiction, but certainly something we can look at as far as a disclaimer, advising people that if you're, getting a building permit or a license to operate an STR,
These are the consequences.
you'll likely see an increase in taxation as a result.
And really, that's with any permit, any renovation permit. I mean, even registering your accessory suite in our database, that prompts, an inspection, and then that prompts looking at your property tax too.
No, but it changes your status. Lori and I live at 135 Spring Park Road. We're an owner-occupied resident. When you become a registered, short-term rental registered applicant or owner, you lose that status, owner-occupied
And
housing.
you shouldn't, because you're not allowed to operate your STR without being owner occupied.
No, you're renting, if you rent it out, let's say 2 months, you're no longer the owner-operator. You're owner-occupied. You're not occupied there that time. And again, that's definitions that maybe we have to deal with at the provincial level. Again, big shift in market value and taxable value, they both become the same when you lose that status. And this person I spoke to, Michael, she wants to maybe get out of the STR. And the question we're asking the question to a former employee of the provincial property tax assessment department. He said, it doesn't just flip over back to owner, it takes a few years. So I think people have to understand, residents have to understand, if you're going into the STR business,
There's a cost.
there's a cost.
Yeah.
You can make money, but there's gonna be a cost, because you become a capital, it's a capital asset, it's making money for you. Lori and I are not making money from our house, at least I don't think we are.
And I think the last thing on the list was an update on the Black Sand Bridge
Exactly.
project.
I
And
don't have any information on
that's
that,
a Donna
but certainly.
Could you
can-
just pass that on to Donna? Much appreciated, Madam Chair, because I just wanted to get these on the agenda, and hopefully we'll be meeting again in a month's time as a standing committee for planning, heritage and development, and I appreciate that Councillor McCabe extended her patience to be with us
Oh,
this
mercy.
evening, because I know we were trying to rush to get out of here, and I think that we're all.
I wasn't rushing.
I just wanna look at our time, and you've got a family, and I gotta get home to a wife, and it's.
I love how he blames me.
I'm
for
not blaming anything,
But
no,
that's
no, I'm just
okay.
saying
That was a great meeting.
I just appreciate your patience, thank you.
For doing my job.
So on that note,
Yes.
motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
Moved
Move.
by Councillor McCabe, seconded by His Worship. Good night, everybody.
Good night.